It's like, what is this for? Like,
I think Joe, somebody said to Joe, why we were here for your exclusive with Shea.
that's ridiculous.
So they are.
Confess that there was not a case, no shows.
Those are nice.
Well, we really are matching. We did not tell Blue Game anymore on the Superstar. It used to be out there, but during big time. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock, so the radio show. Yeah, tons of them. Where was it? It's playing within the system. I don't know that he has any of those.
How's it going?
I know it's early still,
But you guys are, I think, top 5, top 3 in defensive rebounding rate so far this season. I know that's been sort of an emphasis and a growth point over the last few years even. Besides, some personnel that has changed, do you feel like there's anything physicality-wise or execution-wise that you guys have worked on and been able to accomplish?
Maybe a little bit. I do think the lineup construction has a lot to do with it. That's always been a strength of being double big. Even before Hart was here, I think the Jay Will, Chet lineups were pretty good defensive rebounding lineups, despite the team not being a great defensive rebounding team. What's been encouraging is we've been double big for most of the season, and the rebounding's been great, but we've also still kept the turnovers relatively high, which has in the past been a trade-off. So I think we've found a balance of being able to play big and also maintain some level of disruption. Maybe not as much as when we've got all the perimeter guys out there, but it has been a positive through the first 12 games.
How about the transition defense with the double big? You would assume that maybe there might be trade-offs there too.
There are usually, some of that's offensive rebounding, some of that's just speed on the court. And three-point shooting. Teams typically get more threes against those units, and they get less rim. So we've kind of learned the general profile of our different lineup constructions. That's one of the benefits of the continuity. But like I said, we've made some subtle improvements on that end of the floor. With the double big lineup, which we've gone to obviously a lot so far this season.
Pace and points in the paint are lower than what you guys normally are used to playing at. You feel like that's due to the injuries, or you feel like that's something that you guys can be better at, or just 12 games into the season is not that big of a deal?
Yeah, Andrew Schlecht asked that question a while back, and we dug into it. And it's a combination of things. I think some of it is the game styles of those closer games early. That's obviously been watered down by having more games since then. I think the pace of the league collectively is higher, especially the bottom teams are faster than they've ever been. The bottom teams in pace, which is rising. The overall pace of the league, it's been a very fast league through 12 games. That's usually the case early in the season, but it's been especially fast. And then there are some situations where we are laying off of maybe some early shots that would contribute to pace, but that are benefiting our overall efficiency. Have been very efficient in the transition attempts that we have had, and we've also been very efficient in our early flow. which isn't necessarily early shot clock, but it's kind of coming up the floor with that. So my point is, I think we're laying off some shots that maybe would juice our pace up, but we're seeing a benefit from that as well.
Mark, is there a verbalized point of emphasis tonight on discipline, showing hands, staying down on Luka and Austin Reeves pump fakes? They tend to feast at the free throw line. How important is that in your game plan tonight?
Yeah, it's huge against them. I mean, that's why they're tough. The toughest covers are the ones that you have to be physical with, but that are really good at drawing fouls, and that's the case with these two guys. It was Butler last night. He's very similar. If you're not physical with these guys, then they just kind of walk you to wherever they want. They're big, strong guys, but they understand how to leverage your physicality against you. So we have to be disciplined. That's a huge point of emphasis against them. That's a huge source of offense for this team, obviously, and so it's certainly something that's top of mind for us.
Mark, I know AJ would be playing a lot regardless, but with Dub out, is that maybe a silver lining where you're seeing AJ in positions doing things that maybe he wouldn't be doing this early in the season if you guys are at full health?
Maybe a little bit, but I think with what he's shown, he would be carving out a pretty good niche regardless of who's available. And I think what's really contributed to that is the defense. Like his ability to be out there really with anybody because of how he's defending right now makes it such that he would be in the game with how he's played so far on both ends of the floor. He'd be in the game regardless of who's available.
You're going up against a team tonight with a very contrasting style than you faced last night against the Warriors. Just in addition to being disciplined, like you mentioned, Matt, just what are some of the elements defensively when you go up against a team like this who likes to get into the paint as much as they do? Yeah,
I mean, a lot of it's just the respect for Reeves and Doncic. Those guys are 67 points a game combined. They're 18 out of the 26 assists per game. So they're just the head of the snake, in terms of playmaking for them, and they're going to make the plays, so you got to try to handle those guys as best you can. It's easier said than done. Obviously, they've gotten off to a great start scoring the ball and creating for the team, but that's top of mind, starting with those two guys and then going from there.
With Case in some of these starting lineups, he's gotten the ace sort of defensive matchup. It was Steph last night, and then tonight I would assume it's going to be Reeves or Luka. But how have you seen him sort of adapt to that, and what's the benefit of having him in those spots? Because he's guarded those guys periodically, but for like the long game of it.
Yeah, I thought last night and the Morant game on Sunday, great opportunities for him, and he rose to those games. I mean, he did a hell of a job on Morant on Sunday. The team did, obviously, but he was primarily on him, and then we matched him minute for minute with Curry last night, kind of for the reason you just mentioned. Dort has taken that matchup so often for us over the years and has gotten such a feel for guarding different head of the snake guys. Doncic is another one. That it's a good opportunity for us to get the reps and get the feedback, and it's good for Kaysen. He's learning, and it's good for us because we're realizing that he's obviously got high capability on some of those matchups.
You mentioned Luka and Austin. Obviously, they've got offensive weapons, but defensively, it seems like Marcus Smart has also provided a boost for them this season. Just what have you seen out of him and what he does so well to be impactful on that end of the floor? Yeah, he's just like an irritant on that end of the floor. He's just ball pressure. He takes charges. He's in the middle of everything in a positive way. I say that respectfully. He's a disruptive defender that you have to account for. He's done that over the course of his career. You can feel the impact that he's had for them in that respect. I think Ayton's helped them as well, just with his size at the rim. There's a reason they're where they are so far. They're off to a really good start because of, obviously those two guys impact on the offensive end of the floor, and then, like I said, defensively they've got some guys that they get some stuff done out there.
Mark, you guys have dealt with so many injuries, guys. When one guy's out, the other guy's in, vice versa. But it hasn't slowed you guys down. I know part of it's your depth, but is there like a standard of play, a style of play that almost transcends, who's available on any given night? Hopefully, but there's also just it's the depth, but it's also the mentality of the team. It's just kind of a no-excuse team. And what we learned last year when we had that stretch without the centers, which wasn't even when all of them were out. We didn't have Hart or Jay Will for the first 10 games while we did have Chet, and then all three of them were out. So we went a good 16 to 18 games where we were playing smalls at the 5 on a nightly basis. And what we learned from that is that it builds kind of a muscle
of resilience for your team that gives you confidence later in the season, and also you learn things during that time. With those constraints that you apply to later in the season, we were able to take some of the stuff that we did early on, some of the lessons we had early on, and when we were whole, still go to those things and kind of know what we had. And we're getting similar type of information right now, obviously with different personnel, but we're getting similar type of information. The double big's a good example of that.
Anyone else?
Alrighty.
D-Bell. Wonderful. How are you?
I'm good.
Just good, Daniel.
Yeah, long day.
Oh, fair.
You're just like, box them up. Let the ladies go first.
Michael.
Hey, JJ. Those two games in April, a little bit different, just with no LeBron and no J-Dub and Dorton and et cetera. But did you kind of learn anything about the way these two teams match up and Luka and Austin and attacking them that you carry into, or is this team totally different this year?
I think it's probably more of the two teams are different. I think conceptually they do a lot of the same things. We do a lot of the same things, but every group's a little different. They clearly have more continuity than us, particularly this time with no LeBron. But we played well in both those games. I thought, in particular in the second game, our ability to just like withstand a bunch of blows. They played really well, and the first game, I thought we were sort of the aggressor, and then we kind of reacted in game two. But if there's something to take from those two games that applies to tonight, I think you just have to be really decisive against them on the offensive end. They're physical. They've got athletes. They've got rim protection. When you create any sort of advantage, you've got to be very decisive. Shoot, pass, or drive. There's can't hold the ball because it's hard to create an advantage against them on a possession.
Defensively, obviously you caught last night's game, and Chet didn't miss a shot, and just where has he grown in the kind of vacuum without J-Dub, and as in kind of the impact, and what's the challenge with him defensively?
I mean, he's again at the top of the league in terms of rim protection. So just you have to have, similar to other guys we played throughout the season, at the top of the defensive scouting report, or offensive scouting report, it's where is this guy? Where is he? You have to have awareness about where Holmgren is. And I think just offensively for him, it just continued growth. So no real surprise there. He's clearly a guy that works on his game and works on his craft and is bought into what Mark and his staff want from him.
What kind of word did you get out of El Segundo after LeBron's participation with the G League today? And then what are going to be the next steps for him?
He was able to participate in the practice, got up and down a little bit with just some like warm-up transition drills, and then progressed to 5-on-5 in the half court, and got I think about 12 to 15 possessions of live 5-on-5 contact. I think it was also an incredible opportunity for Zach and his staff and all the guys that are with South Bay right now to have that experience. But the reports are that he looked good and was moving well.
If his recovery continues in the right direction, would you try to have a practice on Monday with him with the Lakers?
I mean, that's 4 days away, so I have no idea on that. We're going to practice, I'll tell you that, but I don't know if he'll be part of it.
JJ, you guys have had like injury-driven adversity, I would say, early in the season with guys in and out of the lineup. Lineups have had to change and stuff like that. How has your team handled sort of like the in-game adversity where things you want to go one way, like absolutely don't? I mean, Atlanta comes to mind, but like some other times too. How has your team handled that stuff? And are there any like, touch points for you as to like these were moments when we kind of like handled it really well?
Yeah, I know we've had, I think, 4 games already that we've come back from being down 10 points. So we've had a bunch of games where things haven't gone well in game. The Atlanta game, at least through 11 games, feels like more like an anomaly in terms of the in-game adversity and our response to it. The reality is you're going to have adversity in a game no matter what against any opponent. That's just sport. That's competition. So our group right now has handled that stuff well. I don't know that there's a moment, but you can certainly point to, the comeback against San Antonio or, us being down early to Portland by double digits and coming back. Our response in Memphis being down at halftime. So they've shown they can do it.
kind of on that point, after the Charlotte game, you mentioned that the dialogue in the huddles was strong. The player-to-player self-correction was there, and you mentioned that that's the mark of a good team, right? Is that something that's just natural or an innate? Is there something as a coach you can do to help that happen with them on the player side? Like, what goes into that dynamic?
Well, we changed how we do the first minute of a timeout, and we talked about it in preseason, and the guys have really embraced that. So that's their time. That's their problem-solving time. That's their communication time. So I've waited a little bit longer to go into the huddles than I did last year, and I've instructed the coaches to give them that time. So Luka comes back and wants to see a replay on the iPad, and Bo can show them that. But as far as that, like, coach to player stuff, when they first come off, we're really encouraging it to be player to player.
What led to that change?
That because we need to be a player-led team. Yeah.
JJ, you mentioned kind of Marcus Smart delivers those Marcus Smart plays, doing the things that you knew he was going to do. But now that you're around him every single day and you see the way he interacts with his teammates, is there something new about his game that you've kind of learned to appreciate, or now that you get to see it?
Nothing new. I mean, I played against him. Was hopeful we would get this version of him, and so far we have. So have been really excited with not only his defense but his play offensively. He's made some big shots for us. He's been a secondary or tertiary ball handler at times. He's been a secondary or tertiary playmaker at times. So he's just kind of starring in his role right now, and it's the version of him that we had hoped for, and we're getting that.
JJ, it's November 12th, early. Neither team is whole, but do you believe in measuring stick, litmus test sort of games, even at this stage of the season?
I believe in those every single day.
I wanted to ask you about Isaiah Hartenstein and kind of the effect that he's had on guys like Isaiah Joe and A.J. Mitchell, even J-Dub to an extent last year. And as a guy who's probably played off of bigs like that, I wonder if he reminds you of anybody that you played with in terms of the impact he may have had on your scoring and ability.
I mean, that's a better question for them. I'm not around those guys every day. I see them 3 or 4 times a year, so it's a better question for them. I was fortunate to play with, guys like Blake and Joel. Those probably 2 stand out the most in terms of the impact they had on me and being able to play off of DHOs and pin downs and inverted ball screens, and just kind of expanding my game that way versus, early in my career. But that group we had, we weren't a very good team, but my last year in Orlando, we had Nick Vucevic and Josh McRoberts and Gustavo Ayon, and all 3 of those guys were hubs. They were hub bigs, and that's what Hartenstein is, and he's one of the best in the league at it.
You had kind of mentioned that you were hopeful that this would be the version of Marcus that you guys would get. Do you see him taking on more and kind of like, he talked to us a little bit about like getting back to winning. Have you seen that energize him in your kind of daily work with him?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of our discussion during free agency. It's a similar conversation that I remember having with Doc Rivers when he was pitching me on joining the Clippers. I told Doc, I need to be a part of a winning team. I need to be part of a relevant team. That's like really important to me. And I think for Marcus, starting his career in Boston and being in the NBA Finals and being on a bunch of playoff teams that made deep runs, he craves that as well. And it was discussed early. It's been discussed since. And I think that environment creates an opportunity for him to use his voice, which was another thing that we talked about in free agency and another thing we've talked about a bunch since. And I think on the leadership side, he's been fantastic. Thanks, Coach. Yep, thank you.